Aging touches each one of us, our parents, our children, and of course ourselves. What are the essential dimensions of caregiving? Dimensions such as who will be providing care for your loved one? Does a family member live nearby? Does your loved one have difficulty performing daily routine activities? Does he or she use assistive devices? Does your loved one have trouble taking medication? Can he or she manage his or her living quarters? Does your loved one have special dietary needs? Does he or she have difficulties keeping doctor appointments or doing his or her shopping? Does your loved one need regular attention? If so, have you thought about assisted living, but your loved one prefers living at home for as long as possible? Would your loved one benefit from in-home care? Are you starting to wear down due to the stress of the care that you're providing? Are your relationships at work and with your family being impacted by responsibilities as a care provider? Do you fear for a loved one's safety? The good news is that agencies exist to help with compassionate home elder care services, whether those services be a few hours a day or long-term care for 24 hours a day. Hello, my name is attorney Ramsey Bahrawy, and welcome to Your Money, Your Life. In this segment, we'll be discussing the senior care services available from in-home care agencies. Joining me is Cynthia Smith. By way of background, Brightstar Care was founded as a family business in 2002 and today boasts over 250 locations nationwide, which provide a full continuum of home care for individuals, families, and healthcare facilities. Cynthia, welcome to Your Money, Your Life. It's great to have you on the program.
Thank you, Ramsey. Thank you for inviting me.
Quite welcome. Listen, let's talk a little bit about what is in-home care. What is meant by that term?
Okay, well, you did cover a lot of it. Essentially, it is service for people in the home. So it can comprise of companion care, it can be homemaker services, personal care, transportation, and then you have skilled care, which would be a nurse or an LPN.
Okay, and where does Brightstar fit into this equation? Tell us a little bit about Brightstar. Who is Brightstar and what does it do?
Well, Brightstar was founded, as you said, in 2002 by Shelley and J.D. Sun in the Chicago area. At the time, J.D.'s grandmother had cancer, and they were looking for home care services for her, and they could not find the quality of care that they wanted. So they started their own agency. Now, that's not unusual, but what is unusual is that they franchised it in 2005, and here we are. The company has over 250 locations nationwide, and they're in 2 countries as well.
That's tremendous growth.
Yes, it really is tremendous growth. And here in Massachusetts, there are 4 locations, and so I work for one of those.
Which location do you work in?
Well, we have a location in Newburyport, and as the business development manager, I cover the Merrimack Valley here in the area.
Now, as I understand things, there's a fair amount of competition with regard to these various different home care agencies. What differentiates you from the others? What makes Brightstar unique, in other words?
Well, there's a lot that makes Brightstar unique. I actually have notes here because I don't want to miss anything.
Go for it.
But I will tell you, and I have to say that I'm very excited about working for Brightstar because of the distinctions about the company. First of all, it's an industry leader in home care, and it's technology driven. And what happens is with the technology, it makes the businesses more efficient, so then they can provide better care for the people that they serve. Entrepreneur magazine named Brightstar as one of the fastest growing women-owned companies. And in 2010, Shelley Sun, who was the CEO and founder, was named Entrepreneur of the Year by the International Franchise Association.
Wow, that's impressive.
And there's a lot. I mean, there's more. Okay. All of the Brightstar locations are going to be joint commissioned, accredited. And what this is a nationally recognized quality standard for home care organizations like hospitals and assisted living facilities. You'll often drive by and see a gold seal outside that says Joint Commission Accredited. And Brightstar is one of the few home care companies that's going to have that national recognition. So those are some of the areas that make Brightstar unique.
Okay.
Other things are there's a rigorous screening, hiring, and training process. And the focus is on quality service and professionalism. And one of the biggest distinctions is that Brightstar services people in the home from infants to elders and all ages in between. There's 24/7 live coverage, there's a 1-hour minimum, there are transportation services, And also one of the big distinctions is that there's a geriatric nurse practitioner who heads the corporate clinical division of Brightstar in the Chicago area. And also each of the offices has their own RN that oversees all the cases. That's a really big difference.
Okay. So you mentioned a little bit earlier transportation services. In other words, you would transport your client from, let's say, their home to their doctor's office or to shopping. Is that what you mean by transportation services?
Right. Our caregivers can sign a waiver that allows them to drive either their own car or the client's car, and so they can get they can provide this service.
All right. Okay. Now, there are some people who oftentimes will ask the question, well, geez, why should I work with an agency such as Brightstar when I can actually have a friend do this for me? Can you explain why it's better to work with an agency?
Yes, it's a good question, and I think this is something that was surprising to me as well. For instance, in Brightstar, the person's going to come, this caregiver is going to come with experience. They're going to have a background check. They're going to be drug screened. They're going to have references checked. There's going to be continual training, and of course with Brightstar there's the RN oversight. And then the biggest thing really is the liability insurance. That's, as a lawyer, I'm sure you're very aware of that.
Huge,
yes.
Yeah. So you carry workman's comp on all these people.
Exactly.
So for example, you know, working with the example of the next door neighbor, if the next door neighbor does come and helps the individual who's at home who needs assistance, and for some reason there's an accident, there's the potential of a lawsuit against the property owner, a lien against that house, and all of that's avoided with an agency like Brightstar because you're carrying all the insurance yourself, and that person looks to Brightstar, not to the homeowner.
Right. In other words, the caregivers work for Brightstar.
Right. And is that covered by workman's comp?
Exactly.
All right. Okay. With regards to home care, you and I had talked off camera before. You mentioned that there are some interesting statistics. Do you have those statistics available at all?
I do.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about those statistics and how are those statistics important?
Well, they're very important, and I think this is one of the things that there's such an explosion of home care interest nowadays. So if you look at the current population, it's about 350 million in the United States. In 2050, it's expected to be over 400 million. Now, in Massachusetts, the Office of Elder Affairs projects a 37% increase in the elderly population between 2000 and 2010, and 2020. And that elders, I mean 65 and older. Now, here's what's an interesting statistic about that. In 2011, more than 8,000 people turned 65 in the United States every day. So that's over 40 million people, which means there's going to be over 27 million people who are going to need some sort of long-term care eventually.
Yeah, the fastest growing population right now, you're right, is the elder population. And we're not just talking in the United States, we're talking in the developed part of the world. So all the developed countries, Europe and Japan, the United States, you lump them all together, this is the fastest growing segment of the population.
Right.
And of course it's for that reason that we're starting to feel some issue or sensing issues from Congress with regard to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. It's because this very, very large group of people is retiring and they're becoming older and they need those services.
Right.
It's a major issue.
It is. Okay,
so it's a fast-growing segment of the population, and of course, people prefer to age in their home, called aging in place.
Right.
And that's, again, where a company like Brightstar steps right in because you go into people's home. Now, how is it that you actually develop people's trust to be able to go into their homes? Because I'm also well aware that older people tend to be very concerned about their privacy and are very concerned about having strangers come into their home. So how do you win that trust?
Well, that's a very good question, and I think it's one of the most important things about working with an agency because you are having somebody come in your home that's a stranger. So the things that we tell people to do and what Brightstar does is ask a lot of questions. Make sure that there's information about the agency that you can trust. Ask about whether you can have an interview with the caregiver. In Brightstar's case, there's an RN oversight, so that's a good question to ask as well. And just the types of services that they provide and just all of the particulars around that. The more questions they ask, the better. But the most important thing is the comfort level.
Right. Now, do you find that from your experience in working with Brightstar, do you find that it is the elder that most frequently hires Brightstar, or do you find it's maybe their children, or do you find it's some sort of a third party? You know, who most often comes looking for the in-home care agencies such as Brightstar?
For the in-home care agencies, it's mostly the family member who will call for a loved one.
Okay.
And you know, they will have gotten the information somewhere else, perhaps at a hospital. They might find a flyer or through their council on aging. But it's usually the family member will call. Okay. And I'll tell you an interesting story. My mother, who will be 89 this summer, started losing her eyesight last year. And it was pretty traumatic for her. She had to stop driving, and we were very relieved when she told us she was not going to drive anymore. And, you know, she broke down on the phone. And unbeknownst to us, she went into the Yellow Pages before we even had a chance to help her, hired her own home care company that does transportation, and now she has a caregiver that comes twice a week that takes her to her appointments, takes her shopping, to doctor's offices. And you know, she's gotten to be such friends with this person that she can't wait to have her visits every week. It's
she
wonderful.
Looks forward to the visits.
She does, and it's changed her whole
great.
perspective on aging.
Now, you know, if you say that oftentimes it's the family members that go looking for the in-home care agency, what should family members look for with regards to their older adult relative to determine that they actually need an in-home care agency to come in and help? Are there certain signs, certain factors that they should be considering?
Well, certainly, you know, they're going to be monitored by a doctor to know if there are issues that are going on in the home. Sometimes, if it's care that's already being provided by the family, and there's an issue where the family member has to take time off from work, and it's just getting tiring. So we call that respite care, so that someone can come in and provide companion services just to kind of help out for that. But also when you see the deterioration of a parent, if there's things that start changing around their bathing, their habits, their feeding, their weight loss, you know, things like that. Of course, working with a physician first, but those kinds of things can be helped just by monitoring someone in the home.
Does your company get involved in terms of assisting people in their home in terms of managing their medication?
Yes, and that is covered. As I said, we do anything from a companion care all the way to an RN, and the RN would be the one to oversee, or an LPN.
All right. Okay. Preparing food, do you assist somebody in terms of preparing their food? Right.
Let me break down the services, because that'll give you an idea. So homemaker services would be things like going in and preparing food, cleaning up, doing laundry, maybe making the bed. And then you have personal care services, and that's going to be more bathing, grooming, dressing. It could be transportation services would fall into the home health aide. Then we have activities. And that would be something like providing reading, games, exercise, music. I mean, you think of things that would help keep a person active and mentally aware. And then you have the skilled nursing segment also, which is anything from a LPN to an RN to a certified nursing assistant.
Now, if you've got an older adult who's home and who already is receiving skilled nursing services from another agency, but in addition needs to supplement that with you know, someone who's going to be a companion, let's say, or someone who's going to come and help them manage their living quarters. Is that something that you're willing to do to supplement the skilled nursing care?
Right, and I'll talk a little bit now about the difference between home care and home health, because that's often where the two will dovetail.
Okay.
Home health agencies are the ones that are Medicaid and Medicare supplemented. In other words, they're paid for by Medicare and Medicaid. And so those are often the first step when there are services needed in the home. Once those services run out or there isn't that available, then we look at the private pay, which is a home health agency, and that's where, I'm sorry, the home care agency, and that's like Brightstar. Right. So often there is the dovetailing. You know, for instance, transportation is a big one that is where we can provide that type of service to take someone to and from, you know, the doctor's office or whatever else they need, or the food or the grooming or whatever is needed at the home.
Now, what about a situation where you've got an older adult who's in assisted living? and they need more frequent services than what the assisted living facility is willing to give them.
Right.
Is that something that Brightstar is willing to do, work with the assisted living facility and that older adult to provide additional services in the facility?
Yes, yes, and that's often one of the things that we do as well. We go into the facility and meet with the client and provide the services that are needed.
Okay. Now, in-home care agencies, are they licensed by the Commonwealth of Mass?
Yes. Well, actually, Massachusetts, they're licensed. It depends on the state.
I see.
In Massachusetts, they're licensed by the Department of Labor and the Department of Public Health.
Okay. All right. And in other states, you're saying they may or may not be licensed?
Right, right.
Okay.
It's by the state.
And does Massachusetts have regulations that govern the conduct of the in-home care agencies, and what types of regulations are they?
Well, they are regulated. I'm actually not as familiar with that end of it, but I can tell you that Brightstar has taken it a step further by agreeing to become Joint Commission accredited. That really raises the bar, but they are regulated.
Okay. Bonded and insured. Brightstar's bonded and insured. So again, a homeowner has nothing to worry about because they know the company is bonded as well as insured.
Right.
Okay, so that's an important factor as well.
It is, definitely. Local, state, and federal agencies, so they follow the rules.
Okay. Now, are all home care agencies created equal, or are there differences, and what should people know in terms of about the differences?
Well, again, it's about the research first, because it's really important to know who you're hiring and what you're hiring. But there is a difference. And it's one of the reasons that Brightstar came about, because Shelley and JD were looking for a quality of care that they couldn't find. And it's one of the reasons why Brightstar is so growing as a business model, because they are doing all of these things that are really making it an exceptional company, an exceptional franchise.
So what sorts of things should a family member be looking for when they interview an in-home care agency? And let me just go over some things with you. First of all, should they be asking whether a written plan is going to be written up, and whether they'll have any input into that plan?
Right.
Should they be asking to what degree the family members will continue to be involved with the older adult? Will they be told in advance what the costs are going to be, and what the level of costs may be, and maybe a range? Is there anything else they should be asking?
Well, I think you covered most of it. The first issue is obviously going to be budget. So they need to look at what they can afford and what makes sense for them. The plan of care is important, and I can speak for Brightstar that the RN would come in to do an in-home assessment and provide a plan of care. And that does involve the family members, of course. And the RN will continue to provide clinical oversight to manage the care. And that is, I think, one of the distinctions as well. And the family members, of course, are notified regularly about what's going on. So it's a very open system. It's not anything that's going to be hidden.
And that plan, that's not cast in stone. I mean, if the person's needs or situation changes, the plan can be also changed.
Oh, absolutely. And oftentimes it will start off as homemaker services, and will go into more of a medical need. And it's one of the nice things that you can be working with the same agency as the elder ages in the home, and the needs change towards that.
And of course, as always happens in human affairs, there are misunderstandings, there are disputes. So I'm assuming you have some sort of dispute resolution process or something to be able to work things out with a client, so to speak.
Right, right. And I think that's one of the things too, is that to first of all be able to interview your caregiver, but also there's a guarantee with the caregiver that that's going to work. If for some reason there isn't a match, Brightstar will go in and change the caregiver and work at it till it's someone that works better.
All right, that's good to know.
Yes.
And again, and these are all things that are discussed in advance with the family and with the older adults. So
exactly.
There are no misunderstandings. Everyone's on the same page.
Right. Right, and it's also, I think, to be able to, when there is an issue, to bring it up right away. It's not something that's hidden. It's just, if there's something goes, if there is an issue, that it is addressed immediately.
Right, right. Now, if someone, again, an individual or a family member comes to you and says, listen, we need services, we needed them yesterday. How quickly can Brightstar actually get somebody into somebody's home to provide the in-home care services?
Well, because we have 24/7 live coverage, that means somebody's live is going to pick up the phone. Within the next, once we get that written assessment initially, we're on the phone right away to the RN and set the RN up to go to the home to do the in-home assessment and do the plan of care. So we say within 24 hours, but it's usually within hours. And of course, it depends on the level of what the issue is as well. If it's an extreme issue, we're going to do what we can to get somebody right on, you know, if within the hour, if possible. So,
I mean, I would assume that if you've got somebody who's on oxygen, that's one thing. If you've got somebody in a wheelchair, that's another thing. If you've got somebody who's ambulatory, who's basically okay, but just needs some help cooking meals and perhaps making their bed, that's a different thing, right? I mean, there are different levels of care here depending on a person's circumstance. Absolutely. You know, and we try to work with the families so that we get there as soon as we can to take care of the needs that are required. Now, what happens if one of your caregivers has an emergency and is no longer able to continue being the caregiver? You know, they were involved in an accident, or they got sick, or they have a family member that got sick and they need to take some time off. Can a replacement quickly be found in order to service the client? Yes, and that's one of the things, you know, obviously when a caregiver comes into the home and there's been an interview and there's a compatibility, we try our best to maintain that relationship ongoing. If there is some unforeseen issue that happens with a caregiver, we do replace them with another caregiver, and that's also guaranteed as well. But the goal is, like my mother has, you know, her Ursula, who she sees twice a week, and I think she would be a little heartbroken if Ursula wasn't available, but it happens. Right. Tell me a little bit about these companionship services. What do you mean by companionship? Companionship, essentially, it's providing a companion care. So it can be, if we're dealing with elders especially, someone who may be bedridden and needs to have someone by the bed at night. They're sleeping, and so, but there may be a safety issue, or there may be a fear issue. There may be even more serious issues. So well, that would be more RN issues. But if the person is needing someone to just sit with them and be with them, that would be companion care. Depending on the level of the nursing issue, it may be more of a CNA, you know, or an RN or an LPN. Again, it really depends on what the issue is. Does some of the companion care, does some of it simply involve sitting with somebody and watching TV with them, or playing cards with them, or just basically being with them? Yes, it can, but I think the point is that our caregivers aren't there to watch TV on their own, and they're not there to be on the computer on their own or do texting. The plan of care will include activities for the client, and that's very important that we follow that plan of care. And with the RN oversight, we'll monitor what's going on in the home on a daily basis to make sure that the plan of care is being monitored. Are these home care providers authorized to take the client, the older adult, out on an activity, to let's say the movies or to the mall, or, you know, just go out? Are they authorized to do that? If they have a transportation waiver, as I said, yes, they can go out and do those types of things with them. And that's so that requires a transportation waiver, and then the provider is free to do that. Right. Okay. So I have a scenario here. Family interviews Brightstar. They have a family member that needs, believe they have a family member who needs in-home care services. They're satisfied with what Brightstar is able to do for them. There's a plan that's put in place. Brightstar's ready to get going. All the financial stuff's been arranged, and then mom and dad, the older adult, they say, we really don't want them in our house. How does Brightstar deal with that? Well, you can't force someone to receive care, but I think it's one of the areas that's important to set up systems ahead of time to do the research before the crisis happens. And so we encourage people to check out their senior centers. Locally, we have the Elder Services of the Merrimack Valley. Find out what agencies and programs are for those who want to age in place, so that you don't have to deal with that situation when someone is in need and there is a crisis. No, I completely agree with you. You know, I'm an elder law attorney, and I run into a lot of resistance, and oftentimes we'll see people in crisis mode. Right. And it's much more difficult to do the job in crisis than it is when you're not in crisis and everybody can calmly sit down and discuss a particular issue and prepare for a crisis down the road. Right. Okay, so Brightstar has grown very quickly in the last 10 years or so. What's in Brightstar's future? I mean, obviously there must be more coming along.
Well, there's a lot happening with Brightstar. It's one of the exciting things about working for them. There are a number of exciting initiatives happening, and there's going to be additional service offerings. I can't tell you exactly what they are, and all of the Brightstar will be accredited by 2012. But one of the big things, and I'm going to read this just so I am very clear about it. They've launched a program called Brightstar Clinical Pathways, and this is an evidence-based approach that is developed to help the patients make the transition from the hospital or facility from the day of discharge, and that's through to the next 30 days. And what this does is there's an in-home care that's tailored specifically for their particular problem, whether it's COPD, heart disease, dementia, and so this program is going to be instrumental in helping to prevent readmissions.
Oh, wow.
That's such a big word nowadays in the home care field.
Yeah.
So this is part of the revolutionary process that's happened at Brightstar that's going to help prevent that.
It's a great place for us to stop. When it comes to your care, there are so many choices, such as nursing homes, assisted living facilities, adult daycare, home health nursing agencies, and home care agencies. Allowing a stranger into your home to provide care creates concerns of trust and privacy. However, only you can choose what's right for you. It's understandable that it's difficult to bring a stranger into your home to provide care. Therefore, it's important to choose an experienced caregiver with a good track record of providing personalized care while respecting your privacy. Whether you need respite care, in-home care, part-time or full-time care, or care at an assisted living facility, make sure to select an agency that is bonded and insured. This should give you the peace of mind that the caregiver in your home is properly trained, compassionate, and trustworthy. It will also allow you to embrace aging in place. Remember that in-home care agencies are flexible and can tailor their programs to your needs. One such agency is Brightstar, which is engaged in meeting the needs of an increasingly growing number of older adults, many of whom live with age-related disabilities. Brightstar assists clients with their activities of daily living in order to enhance their clients' independence and well-being. Today, people aged 65 or older represent one of the world's fastest growing populations. It's a population that requires unique medical and social services. This population often requires regular assistance that an agency such as Brightstar provides. Remember to do your due diligence by educating yourself, for in the words of Ben Franklin, an investment in knowledge always pays the best interest. In closing, thanks to my guest Cynthia Smith of Brightstar. Cynthia, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you, Ramsey.
And as always, thank you to you, our viewers, for watching Your Money, Your Life. My name is Attorney Ramsey Bahrawy, building your trust.